Hey everybody, welcome back to another Monday episode of Movie Mayhem. I'm Donnie Shields, and this is my co-host Chase, Morgan Hulett. Chase, happy Monday. Way to start the week. I know we both had a busy weekend, so here we go. Fresh off the Monday, fresh start for everybody. Chase, how are you doing?
Good. Monday morning rock star. It's a good thing to have in the morning, start off the week. It has been a very busy weekend, but you know what? It's also been a lot of mayhem in Hollywood, it sounds like, with all these strikes and stuff. Sounds like, now quote me if I'm wrong, but sounds like the actors joined the strike.
Yes, the actors joined the strike, just like The Empire Strikes Back half the time, but the actors had joined the strike with the writers, so we're going to get into that. But first, I think we should have a light-hearted news and talk about the opening of Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning Part 1. It's an impressive thing, and I know we talked about Tom Cruise on the last episode. It's impressive, the Top Gun Maverick run of last year. I think that was a surprise in the Hollywood industry, how Top Gun Maverick was just able to blow through the box office to really be, and I'll quote and say it was the top grossing film of 2022. Avatar was really so far the top grossing film of 2023 because that December release date, it made most of its $2 billion in 2023 alone. So Top Gun Maverick, I don't think anybody expected that to be 1 point some odd $billion of box office last year. But Tom Cruise is back for another one, hoping to build off that, hoping to capitalize off that. So over the 5-day stretch, it came out, I guess, a day earlier than projected. I think it had a Wednesday release. So over the 5-day stretch, it made $80 million in America and a few other million overseas, which actually is the top, now not adjusted to inflation, is the top grossing Mission Impossible film of all time in the opening weekend with $80 million. Now, what's been reported is it has a $300 million budget. I think that might be incorrect because I don't see it being like an Indiana Jones level. I think that 300 million is very much like the Avatar, like where they say it has to gross $1 billion, or at least it had to break even. They shot 1 and 2 together, from what it sounds like. So I don't know how much of that $300 million budget is accounted for one movie. I feel like that's probably spread out over two.
Yeah, I wanted to look at the numbers. So technically it's estimated 290 million for the budget. Yeah, and right now opening weekend 56.2 million. But worldwide right now it is at $235 million. Just over that. So I think it's going to do okay. And that's another thing that we've talked about before is how these films they judge if they're good or not based on what the box office brings up and how much they make and if they meet their goal or above. Because like if you and me make a $100 film, let's just say, and we get $200 out of it, I mean we've made 100 and we've done good. But sometimes films that come out are good to the public, but to the critics in that they're not good because they didn't make budget. But it's a whole big game. But I've noticed that they have been releasing these films earlier, like a day earlier. You said this one came out on a Wednesday. I think that was July 12th it came out. I know the Mario movie came out a day early because I went to see it. And I'm wondering I'm wondering if they're doing that to help with their box office, because I know the a lot of how they get their money's worth is not just the box office, it's the DVD sales. But now that you can just rent them for $5.99 on Amazon Prime or on Max, they just come out. There's some movies that come out on Max that are still in theaters if you pay the extra. There's like two platforms. One's with commercials, and the other one's like no commercials, and you get early releases, which is the one I pay for because I wanted to see the early releases. So I'm wondering how that affects now. Like I would think that not having the DVD sales that we grew up with as kids, because you'd go to Best Buy and the movie section was just huge, and now you go and it's like nothing. So I wonder how that affects. So you know what I mean? I'm wondering if they're trying to find a way to make it more money, and that probably hurts them a lot more too.
Well, I take a different route. I think the Wednesdays, because remember, I'm used to going through high school. In 2011, was it 2011, 2010, somewhere around there when the Green Lantern came out. Abomination of a film, Ryan Reynolds' Green Lantern. But those were the typical days where, like, I remember my sister was like close to graduation, and like I went with her senior friends, and we all decided to just go to the Bloomsburg AMC. And it was probably Cinemark at the time. It probably wasn't even AMC. But either way, that theater has changed names like 3 times in a decade. I'm not kidding you. So that I remember going to the midnight premieres, whether it was that or Pirates of the Caribbean. Like, they were strictly midnight. Like, if you could get like a 10 o'clock showing, that was like rare. It used to be like 12 o'clock. You get home at like 3 or 4 in the morning, and then of course school the next day on a Thursday night. So I feel like as things have gotten earlier on Thursdays, like I saw Avatar on like a 3 o'clock in the afternoon on Thursday, and to release the Mario movie on a Tuesday, Wednesday, yeah, that had the Easter weekend, I believe it was around there. It was a holiday.
April 5th or something like that.
But I do have to say, I think there's a different game being played as far as that. I think there's a publicity game being played with the media, because now you look at like I read, you said about $56 million over the weekend, but like they give you the 5-day weekend total now of 80 million, which sounds more impressive than your 56.2 or whatever it was. And I think for antics and publicity, I feel like studios are more inclined to do that because it brings that extra level of hype. Meaning if it draws 1 or 2 more butts in the theater, to go see this film about like, hey, look at this, it's made this much money. Now, take that into comparison what Top Gun made opening weekend, second weekend. It's not comparing to that, but a Mission Impossible movie hasn't made as much as that. So, like I said, $80 million, not adjusted to inflation, is the best quote-unquote opening, even though it was 5 days that the Mission Impossible has had. Now, Chase, we're going to move on to a different topic. I know that we're talking about Mission Impossible. We're obviously both excited to see Oppenheimer / Oppen Barbie or Barbenheimer or whatever they decided to coin that. That was interesting. Saw a lot of memes, saw a lot of things. Even on Looper, they shared the fake poster for Barbenheimer. There's films coming out later this year that are scheduled to that might not hit release dates now. If the film's done, it's going to come out. But right now, the halting process has been with the writers. We talked about the Hugh Jackman, Ryan Reynolds thing being on hold because they can't, quote-unquote, improvise on set because it's technically writing and it goes against the union and all the contracts and whatever. But now, the actors have jumped in right on top of the mess, which I have some quotes I watched, and I think I sent it to you. Fran Drescher, she's the actor president of the SAG, I believe, union. And Chase, I know that you listen to her words. I want to give you the floor first to talk about the actors union. And do you feel like it was a great idea for them to jump in with the writers? Do you like the idea that they're side by side, or do you think this hurts them in this economic time?
I think it was the right time. I mean, the things that the executives were saying about we're going to make them lose their apartments and homes. I mean, you look at these entertainers, they're just people. They're just like you and me. I know they are on the big screen and they make a lot of money, but they're just like you and me. And like my dad says, they put the pants on just like I do, one leg at a time. And I think it's good that they teamed up, because at some point with these high paid, elites that don't have any talent, but just collect all the money from the people who work hard, at some point, you're going to get irritated by it. And you have to stand your ground. And I think the Actors Guild, them joining this strike, is hopefully telling the elites that, hey, we're tired of this. You can't expect good work when you're treating people poorly. You need to treat people, you need to pay them well, and you got to treat them fair. You can have and it can ruin a job for you. Like, you can have the best job, but if your boss is a person that treats you with disrespect, then it's going to ruin it for you. So I think what she said was very powerful. She stood her ground. You have to stand for something or you fall for anything. And her just speaking out and saying enough is enough, which that I'm paraphrasing. But she had a whole like 20-minute speech almost of her just saying that they need to be treated well. These higher ups, they look down at people. They look down at you and me. And we can get into politics and all of that about this and bring it all together, which I'm not going to get into politics at this moment. But I think that they work well together. If you want to write, you need to have someone perform it. And I think you and I have that same issue where we can write something, but if we don't have actors, then it just kind of sits there in dead air. So those two working together, you get these unions that work together and they can accomplish a lot. And these elites at some point are going to have to bend the knee, you know? And I'm wondering, because correct me if I'm wrong, but it's the Writers Guild and the Actors Guild on the strike. I wonder if the PGA or even the Directors Guild are going to join as well. What do you think? Do you think all the unions are going to start kind of collaborating on this strike and kind of get the ball rolling?
So I think that there's more to come out of this. I don't think this is something where Hollywood solves it right away. But I got to say, I commend you because this is going to be a great conversation because we are actually in disagreement on this. Which, like I said, I think that this is the first time in the show we quote unquote can disagree. But I think it's fascinating to pick your brain because you're viewing them as normal people. I know that they're normal people. But I want to start with the positives before I go in and rip the unions and stuff like that. So the positive being, I understand the whole AI push in the movement. They want to make sure that they get paid for something that is digitally created for their face, their likeness, their image. The actors, I should say. And I'm cool with that. I think that AI is a scary thing, though. Although I find it fascinating that they're like, yes, we need the push to be financially gained out of it. I'm over here like, how about you just like, under this next union strike that it's written in the bylaws that like, hey, no artificial intelligence in the films. Like I can agree with them that they should get paid if it's digital recreation of themselves. And just like the writers too, apparently, and I was reading into the whole fact that writers get a certain percent, like their money is based off how many lines they write in a film or how many like pages they write, like some of their contracts. So by using AI to rewrite and to correct and change, I guess that the studio heads are not giving them the quote-unquote percentages that they would normally get. So there's the AI perspective. Now I gotta say, I gotta go into Fran Drescher because I have her quotes pulled up that I think are very fascinating. Number one quote, the eyes of the world and the eyes of labor are upon us. First of all, nobody cares other than entertainment news, really. Nobody really cares about this strike because there's been so many strikes that have happened, whether it's the railroad system or the mail system and other things that have happened. This is not really headline news. Not too many of Americans really care. You and me care because we're in the film industry and can talk about this. She had another quote, what's happening to us is happening to all fields of labor. She might be talking about AI, but I don't like the comparison because, again, I know that we talk about how they're normal people, just like you and me, and they wear the pants, they show up to work each day. But I had a conversation with somebody, I had World War II weekend here in Berwick, and to act like I had the same job as somebody like that that's saving lines, or somebody on the front lines, like I just feel like to compare our field, which is a let's sit down at our computers, let's go behind the camera, let's have our coffee and sip, I feel like it's weird that she would say so many times comparing it to other jobs because we're not like that. Like I can't get behind that, but here nor there. I'm just nitpicking in that case. It impacts people in this country around the world. Again, one of the things too is you have to understand the catering business. There's a lot of caterers that go into the film industry because they have to feed the cast and crew. It does affect other businesses, and she is absolutely right. Around the world, though, it's fascinating, and I get that there's other countries like, what's that studio where John Williams typically scores at over there in London?
I don't know by name, but yeah,
it's blanking. But like other places across the world rely on the United States and the media and stuff like that in the film industry. I get that. But, it's interesting, too, because I was like, do they not have their own unions? Like, it's kind of fascinating that she would compare around the world because I was like, they should have their own unions as well in this case. She repeatedly said that we are the victims here. Again, nitpicky about that, but I don't like that saying. The one that gets me, though, is when we're giving hundreds of millions of dollars to our CEOs. I completely agree with you, Chase. I completely agree with her. I think Bob Iger is severely overpaid. But at the same time, a CEO, how many companies, we talk about Disney being a monopoly, but how many times or how many companies do you have to watch over? How many film industries? How many film districts? Like, there's a reason why the CEOs get paid compared to the actors, because the actors show up for a certain project that they're casted on, maybe not come back to the studio for another 2 years to do another film. I don't have an issue with somebody like a CEO getting paid top dollar when he's going to investor meetings, when he's going before the board. Like, that to me doesn't bother, but there has to be that good balance in between. So I get what she's saying. I don't know if that should be a reason or not. We are going to be in jeopardy of being replaced by machines. I agree because that strikes to the AI challenge. But I think that too many of these celebrities at the same time, they hold up their nose, they scoff at the middle class, the hard worker, the blue-collared worker. And there was a while ago, Chase, this is my only political rant, there was a time where Hollywood actors would say, well, they can't mine, so they need to learn the code because they need to adapt with the times and the technologies. Now I got to turn that back on you and say, oh, now you care about the technology replacing you. I think it's fascinating because give it about 5 years, it eventually comes for you as well. You share the wealth, and last quote from her, you share the wealth because you cannot exist without us. Anytime somebody feels like they are irreplaceable in life, I think you've hit it a little bit too high on the notch. I feel like you're a little bit too selfish. And that was my takeaway from her speech. Chase, do you have anything to counter me? Because maybe I just went too much of a spiel.
Well, for one, I completely forgot to even mention the AI issue, I'll call it. Completely forgot that. I do understand how you work so hard and then AI can just kind of do it for you. That sucks. That's if you are working on something and AI can do it. There's no character in that, though, in my opinion. But also, Donnie, I don't think you and I disagree on this topic. I think I was just focused on talking about how the people on strike, how it's affecting them. And I was mainly focusing on the elites because as much as they are, looking at multiple studios and all that, I still think it's a little wrong what they do. They're talking about we're going to make them lose their homes and whatnot. And then they go on these billion-dollar retreats and on their private jets and all that. It's kind of like a politician complaining about world hunger. And then he flies to Cancun and eats this big meal and doesn't even finish it and wastes food. It's kind of like, okay, you make your money, you do it, you make money well, good for you, but you're complaining about this, but then you're kind of causing the issue. You're not doing anything about it, And so I don't think we disagree on this, just so you know. I do think we agree. We just look at it differently.
But it's a better conversation if we disagree, Chase. Come on now. What's wrong with you?
You know more about the strike than me. What I was trying to focus on is how it was affecting the people on strike, how it was personally affecting them.
No, I think that's a great angle to go with because you're looking at the personability side. I'm looking more at the financials and being like the overscape, but like maybe the nitpickiness. And you're right, I should maybe not have picked out certain quotes. But I got to tell you, this also goes into one thing as somebody that I know people that have been unionized through Du Bois Business College that I used to go to that tried for these screenwriting guilds, for these actor guilds. And yes, the actors guilds, when you get in there, and I know it's a long process still, but when you get in there and apply, they find you jobs, which to me in life, I'm not going to say that I've ever had like a free ride. Luckily, the connections you make kind of feel like a free ride because like one thing lines up another. And that's how life typically goes. One job, you meet somebody, you go to another job, you meet somebody, and you work your way up the scale of life. But I don't know if I like certain things that the unions do as far as like, let's get the actors jobs. Well, the actors should be going out and getting their own jobs. And I do hope, and I'm not somebody that loves unions. I personally made the statement on Shield of Hope. I was like, I will in the future, when the films get big enough, see if you are a part of an actors guild, a part of a screenwriters guild, because that actually will less liken your chance of being on my productions because of just the amount of paperwork you have to do, just the amount of all this other stuff that you have to do and accommodate. I'm just like, there's no point in it. I'm going to go get somebody off the street. And the other thing is to take away from this, and a lot of people have spoken out, a lot of actors want to work still, a lot of screenwriters want to work because it could be about the money, yes, it could be about like, yeah, we're underpaid and understaffed and like whatever, but at the end of the day, they love what they do and they want to get back in. So to me, I wish the unions would take a step back, most likely be abolished, and let people be able to negotiate their own contracts. If writers, like say they sign like a 5-year deal with the studio, I would love these writers to come back in 5 years and be like, hey, I want more money. And the studio could say no, and you could be out of a job and go look for it somewhere else. But if you are good at what you do and you are this quote-unquote irreplaceable, I feel like there's a spot for you and they're going to be willing to pay you. the other thing, like, it kind of becomes like a teachers union per se too, because the teachers union, they get like tenured, and everybody knows about tenure in the teachers union, where you get to like work your 3 to 5 years, and then all of a sudden like you kind of like flow along through until you retire. And I'm assuming it has to be the same way with the actors and directors and the screenwriters guild, where you get placed in these spots, you can't really be fired, you get like promoted in companies and yada yada yada. I just don't like that as a perspective, because I like being able to negotiate my contract one-on-one like I do throughout all my business and life.
Yeah, I agree. And yeah, with there's pros and cons to union. And when I graduated film school, I was looking into unions, and it was just too difficult. Unions are good because you have guaranteed work and you have guaranteed retirement and all of that, but you didn't have the freedom. You couldn't really go on many sets because a lot of the sets, like out around school and whatnot, were non-union. And all the people I've met on set, like the last film we did, were non-union people. They were just people who like doing film. And you would have not met those people if you were in a union, because you could not work on a non-union set. So being a non-union filmmaker, let's just say, it's you don't get the pros about the union, obviously, like guaranteed job and whatnot, but you do have more freedom to work on other sets. Like I got a film job in September in Montana, where I'm at. It's just a short film. It's non-union, and I'm not getting paid, but I might meet somebody on that set that will help me or even help us on our next film, your film, my film, and anything in the future. So that's what I do like about not being in a union. But they have the pros and cons pretty much. You just kind of have to outweigh what is worth it and what isn't.
And I think there's also barriers here too. I know that you and me, and I'm not saying that no writer, no director, no actor hasn't came up through what we're continuing to do. We're following the footsteps of a lot of these great individuals that came before us. But it's weird how you almost forget where you came from. Like, I do appreciate, like, if somebody needs help on your film, my film, and yeah, we have a lot of volunteers that come in. But if somebody needs a financial pay to get there, we're like, okay, what's the lowest you can do? What can we afford? We're making these films for basically off like a strict budget. You know what I'm saying? Like, so we're the type of person, as a small studio, we're gonna be like, hey, extending a helping hand. Like, I know that we're not working with the pros of the pros necessarily. We're working with amateurs that are really grinding at their craft. But it's one of those things too. Like, I know when I get a bigger studio that we're gonna be accommodating. We're gonna be able to bring in talent and be able to just distribute the wealth among all of us. I think when you go full corporate, which is again these jobs that they want. So if you want to go full corporate, you have to understand that there is a corporate greed. There are these quote unquote elites, but you signed up for this. You could have started your own film studio. You could have been doing all this stuff like we did, but you chose I'm not going to say it's an easier path, but it's definitely a path where it's no longer freelance. You're no longer a quote-unquote starving artist per se. You're signed, you're booked, you're with the studio, and you're working in your career field. So there has to be some pros and cons, because if the union's getting you jobs all the time, you can't really be complaining about like getting your wages, because you're doing what you love and they're helping you get, like, does that make sense? Like, to me, like, there's just so many things. So like, to me, I have to say that the writer's strike, and again, I talked about this last time with the writers and specifically the writers, now we have the actors, but with the writer's strike, I picked on them because they picked the worst of the economy to do it in the worst economic times. And now now the actors did the same thing. And I'm just like, bro, there's a certain point in time where, and I'm not saying I never wish anybody to lose their jobs, but I think when people come back, and I do hope, semi-hope, that I don't think a lot of these people will be returning, and I don't think that they should.
Yeah, I can agree on that, especially the things that are coming out movie-wise, and a lot of people complaining about remakes and all that. Yeah, some people shouldn't come back, but I hope everyone the best. I hope everything works out for everyone. I hope if people need to learn a lesson, that they learn a lesson, and I hope people's heart changes sometimes, and just hope the best. I really do. That's the last thing I can say about it, because I don't wish any damnation on somebody, even if they deserve it.
I just think that there's lessons to be taught. And again, I think the worst is I'm not going to blame necessarily the people that are in the strike, the ones that can't work because of this. I'm going to blame the union meeting and the president, Fran, for potentially getting some of her staff slash people in the guild and the association fired and never coming back, because that's all that this is. Because if you want more money, and this is the thing too with the Hollywood structure right now, especially specifically right now, if you know that you're Disney and you're laying off people at ESPN, you're cutting and gutting that company. If you're gutting ABC, if you're basically you're cutting your parks down with the crew. We saw that in there. And you're also going to be gutting your film division because you've lost $800 million in the past quarter from your films. A lot of those union members are on Disney. There's no way they're not. There are a lot because that's a big studio, so they're going to host them. If you want more money and they're losing money, they are going to pick and choose who they keep on staff. Which means if you want more money, they're going to pay you more money if you're important, but they're going to dismiss the lower ones that were half in the door, half out of the door anyway.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. Well, that was my union / writers rant. You can watch the full video. I will link it down in the description below. Again, a lot of good points covered. I did actually appreciate, and the one thing is I will give Fran a lot of credit. I know I picked on Fran Drescher, but she at the same time represents the union well. She got emotional when she needed to get emotional. She called out. She spoke well. And that's everything you elected president of a union to be. So I will do a round of applause at the end.
Yeah, she did good on that part. On other news, Donnie, I watched the new trailer for Wanka. The Oompa Loompa was the only part I was like, Hugh Grant? They use Hugh Grant, but I'm kind of excited. I'm kind of curious. It's the director of Paddington and Paddington 2, which Paddington 2 is apparently the greatest movie of all time, according to Nicolas Cage. There's a movie called, I don't know the name now. Let me look it up before I say anything. Anyway, I did watch the trailer for it, and it looks really good. Did you watch the trailer for it?
I did not. I saw the behind the scenes photos though, which again, this was just something like, it was weird because Oompa Loompas aren't like smallish creatures. But there was a behind the scenes shot where like they had an Oompa Loompa and kind of like, you know how like Beauty and the Beast has like the rose inside the glass that he's watching? There was like an Oompa Loompa inside there on the behind the scenes shot. I was like, that's weird.
It is weird. The movie I'm talking about is The Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent. And they talk about Paddington 2 is the greatest movie of all time. So watch that movie. But anyway, I did watch Wanka. I am excited for it. I think that Timothée Chalamet is going to be a great actor for that. I like the original better. A Johnny Depp one was all right, but I like the Gene Wilder one. That's my favorite one.
Gene Wilder, hands down, wins it. I didn't actually watch the Johnny Depp version. I maybe saw like little bits and stuff like that. But is Willy Wonka one of those generational stories we can continue to tell time after time? Or should like there reach a time where you're just like, okay, we need to like stop this?
I'm thinking, depending on how this one goes. No, so this one is different than the other two because this one is before he became Wonka and had the chocolate factory. So this is him getting it set up, which is the cool part. Because the other two films, it's about a boy who gets the golden ticket and goes to the chocolate factory and actually sees everything and meets the Oompa Loompas and all that stuff. But this one's like meeting it, which that's when remakes are okay for me, is when you're like a prequel, setting up like, okay, you know what this is going. How did it get there? That's the interesting part, because it's not really a film that is like spoiler alert type film. You know what's going to happen. It's like, this is a whole different genre. But The Thing, have you ever watched The Thing?
Yes.
Okay. Well, I love The Thing. I love those alien movies. I watched 2011 prequel a while back, and it's great because you know what happens. If you've watched the original, you know what happens. You know they're not going to really make it. So it's cool just to see how it does come about, or how Alien comes about. So with Wonka, I'm just curious on where they take it. And it's kind of funny because the month before Wonka comes out, Dune Part 2 comes out, and he plays a whole different character. And I love seeing actors where they play one character and then they play a whole different serious character, and then they play a really funny, happy character. So it's good to see actors that do that because you can see their skill and see that they can play multiple roles, unlike Dwayne Johnson, which he can play multiple roles, but once you see the actor be the same person in every film, you're like, okay, can you do anything else? But Timothy, he can do a lot. So that's a movie that I don't know if I'll see in theaters or not. My fiance probably would want to. I have to see Barbie, so might as well see Wanka.
It better be a double feature. You better go see Barbie first and then Oppenheimer. You can't be okay. I'm gonna give us some solid advice. You can't watch Barbie second. You have to watch it first. You don't want to go from Oppenheimer to Barbie. I feel like that would be really bad. Like you need to go to Barbie to Oppenheimer, because after you watch Barbie, you want to get that all out of your mind and just explosions and the atomic bomb. That is what you want. That's every filmmaker's dream.
Well, Donnie, we should do a thing where we have to see both of them, but we should see them in different order.
What do you mean we have to see both? I never agreed to watch Barbie.
You gotta see Barbie. If
I never agree. I don't care if it's like the next generation. I don't care if it turns out as well as the Mario movie. I am not seeing Barbie.
You don't want to see Barbie?
I mean, there's a specific person in my life that might make me, but I'm hoping it doesn't come down to that.
You give me their number, and we will convince you to go.
I might just break up with them.
I'm too far on that. I already got a ring on this, so I can't. I can't.
You can't. It's too late for you, but it's not too late to me. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in for another episode of Movie Mayhem. I'm Donnie Shields.
I'm Chase Morgan Hulett.
Have a good Monday, everybody.